Lucky last. I think you're about 20 minutes away from beer, so hang in there. Last one. I want to share a few ideas with you guys today around influence and generosity, the connection that influence and generosity have. And the speakers here today have been amazing, and it's pretty inspiring stuff. So it's awesome, getting our money's worth. Before I do, for those of you who aren't aware of perhaps the legend of New Zealand, where I'm from, I'll share three things with you about what we're famous for. We're famous for Lord, obviously, and continuing on the theme, Lord of the Rings. This is Peter Jackson, the man who brought that back to life. The third thing we're famous for is probably what we're most well known for, and it's not in fact water, but it's our unique ability to combine the 5 vowel sounds into one vowel sound. So, those of you who know New Zealanders, there are a few of us in the house, you can get it from the horse's mouth later on, or perhaps from the sheep's mouth. The 5 vowel sounds, A, E, I, O, U, we combine into one vowel sound, which is That's how we speak. So you say water, we say water. This is something I've always struggled with coming to the States, trying to order myself a glass of water, and I say, yeah, get a glass of water. And they say, a what? I'm like, a glass of water? Oh, water? Oh, water, okay. So perhaps with some irony, the other word we struggle with in New Zealand is coffee. That's how you say coffee in New Zealand. You say coffee, get a cup of coffee. So I fell in love with coffee back in the 90s when it was cool first time around. And as I studied product industrial design, I made coffee to put myself through school. And I really loved it. I loved the interaction, and we've heard lots about the interactions, and especially from Alex, the interaction across the espresso machine. I fell in love with that, but there's something else I fell in love with, and I think it's been touched on by a few of the other speakers. I fell in love with watching what happened over a cup of coffee shared, and this idea of the exchange of ideas. People came together to sit over a cup of coffee and, show generosity and inspire each other. So that's what I really fell in love with. Peter asked me to come and talk about brand in regard to building a successful brand or a successful coffee space. And the word brand is perhaps a little intimidating for lots of us. The word brand conjures up images of big corporate, groups and being very slick. So what if we replace the word brand with influence? Growing a successful brand, perhaps you could say growing influence. So I want to connect this idea of brand and influence and generosity, and that brand is influence, and the best way, or a very significant way to grow influence, is through this act of generosity. So there's an idea which, it comes from an old proverb, and this idea affected me very profoundly, and I would like to say it has affected the organization that I work with, and it's this idea here. The world of the generous gets larger and larger, and the world of the stingy gets smaller and smaller. It's an amazing idea, and whether you work in a big organization or a small coffee shop or anything you do, outside of coffee, whatever, this idea of generosity and demonstrating generosity can increase the size of your world. So, Coffee Supreme started 21 years ago in New Zealand, not by me, but by a couple in Wellington City, which is the capital of New Zealand. And they started as a cafe, or you guys call them coffee shops, we call them cafes. They started as a cafe which grew in its influence and popularity and was a very salty little joint on the streets of Wellington. And from there, they grew so much that they bought their coffee roaster, who was struggling at the time. So they bought their coffee roaster and they continued to grow, and their popularity grew. They roasted fantastic coffee and they started wholesaling. And wholesaling grew, and away it went. And it was, this was 20 years ago when things were really kicking off in New Zealand in coffee. So they grew, and about 10 years ago, they decided that they should head to Auckland, which is the main city in New Zealand. And so they asked me to get involved then, and we got stuck into Auckland, which the market obviously was huge. So headed to Auckland as a wholesaler. We'd become a big wholesaler, supplying cafes and selling coffee to cafe owners. And things were tough in Auckland. At the time, it was dominated by a number of big, very successful coffee companies who had really captured the hearts of Auckland. And we had a tough time cracking Auckland. We did what every other wholesaler would do. We got ourselves a big warehouse and we painted it brown, because that's the colour you painted stuff in coffee 10 years ago. And bought ourselves a van and got some staff that would train baristas and fix coffee machines and all of that stuff. And it took us a long time to get some traction. And a couple of years in, we were sitting down talking, probably over a cup of coffee. And we thought, what is it that we're missing? And we're missing something that I think we had overlooked, which was our roots. And our roots came from hospitality. And our roots came from serving cups of coffee and being a cafe, a space that people came and they could see us and they could touch us. And we'd overlooked that as we became a big wholesaler. And so I think we'd lost the art of hospitality and the art of generosity. So we built Good One. We built Good One down a back street in Auckland, which was at the time our warehouse, which was painted brown. And we built this place so that we would get to touch coffee drinkers again, not just cafe owners, because, cafe owners, there's like 1,000 cafes in Auckland City. Let's be honest, only about 100 of them were any good. And of that 100, about 20 of them we could probably win. So we were trying to go for a market of 20 people, 20 cafe owners. When we opened Good One, we realized that there were thousands of coffee drinkers and people who loved drinking coffee. So our market overnight was boom. We had a much bigger market. So we built Good One, and we created a place that we could sit people down and show them who we are, really who we are. I believe there's no greater way to influence somebody than by sitting them at your own table and serving them a cup of coffee. So we built a big table, and we put the kettle on, and we built Good One. In doing this, we learned some stuff. We learned some valuable lessons through the fail of overlooking our past and overlooking our roots. We learned lots of things, but I've just got 5 things to share with you that I hope maybe you take 1 or 2 of these away. These are things that, good lessons we learned. They are this: be intentional. This little yellow marker was something we chose as our brand at Good One. It's an everyday thing. In the States, you have fire hydrants on the side of the road. They're really cool. We see them in movies and music videos, and there's like girls dancing around them with water and stuff. We don't have those in New Zealand. We have yellow paint. So we don't have a lot of money in New Zealand. Lord and Peter Jackson have all the money. So we have yellow paint, and we paint yellow triangles on the road where there's a fire hydrant. And throughout residential New Zealand, there are these little triangles painted all over the road every couple of 100 metres. So we stole something intentionally. We stole this little bit of municipal collateral, and overnight our brand was across New Zealand. Thank you. We called Good One because Good One is something that Kiwis say all the time, and I don't think it's just a Kiwi thing, it's a global thing. People say Good One, right? How you doing? Yeah, having a good one. How's your coffee? Yeah, good one. Everything's a good one. So we called Good One because, like the yellow marker on the road, our brand was on the lips of the world. So overnight, people were talking about us in conversations. And Sting was asked years ago why he called his band the Police. And he said, well, the police are in the newspapers every day. Be instinctive. This is the front of Good One. It's a warehouse. It has a roller door for a front door. It's down a very skinny back street, down tucked away in a neighbourhood in Auckland. And I remember standing across the road from this, where this photo was taken from, under a suffering avocado tree for some reason. There was an avocado tree there that just had the most manky fruit on it. And I stood under that tree with the owner of the company, and he said, yeah, I don't know, Al, a cafe down a back street with a roller door for a front door, it just doesn't make much sense. You know, the big, shiny coffee companies were up on the main drag with the glass doors, and you could see people in there and be seen and all of that. This is tucked away. And I said, look, I'm just going to go with my gut here. Surely you know your market, am I right? You know your market better than anyone else. You know your customers, hopefully, better than anyone else. It was a gut thing, and I said, this is where we should be. This is where Coffee Supreme should be, where we should build Good One. So we did it down here. Be instinctive. Go with your gut. It's not always right, but go with your gut. Keep good company. I remember my dad said to me years ago, if you want to look at the sort of person you'll turn out to be in 5-10 years, look at the books you're reading and the company you're keeping. And it's so true that the people we rub shoulders with every day, the people we work with, and I'm talking about people you buy coffee from, the staff you employ, the customers you sell to, all of that stuff. Be very careful about the company you keep, because the company you keep will have a huge effect on your company, your brand, and your influence. Keep good company. This is one that is a big deal for me. Invest in the next generation. We're all sitting in this room today because somebody gave us a shot years ago, right? A key part of your business is the next generation. Success is succession. And if you don't have a plan to spot talent and bring them through your company, then you're going to have a tough time. And I hadn't really planned to say this, but last night I looked around the room, and I look around the room now, and the average age here is kind of high, yeah? I don't mean to offend anybody. I think Peter is doing an amazing work in developing the Symposium as getting the influential people and the leaders in the industry globally together. And I know that it costs a lot to be here. It's what, like $1,000 to be here? So maybe the next generation doesn't have $1,000. So maybe the best thing you could do for Peter and his team is not come to this and buy a ticket for somebody else in your company who's younger and going to go away from this with more than you, unless you're planning to repeat everything you've learned today and tomorrow back in your company, right? And if you're going to do that, then forget I just said that. Invest in the next generation. This is Ollie. He's one of our stars. He's like 22. Sorry, I hope I didn't offend anyone there. This is Elliot. He's on his phone during this particular shoot. They're powerful with their toys, and I think, social media and all of this stuff, this is a great way to let your young talent connect with the outside world, and Instagram is only one example of amazing ways to have influence and to let another generation do something. There is a good chance that the next generation will do it better than you, so give them a go. The last thing of my 5 is be generous always. When I talk about generosity, I'm not just talking about giving your money away. There are lots of other things that cost you dearly. Your time, your good ideas. Your good ideas is the thing that I do bang on about a bit. Be very generous with your good ideas. If you look at ideas as a bottomless resource floating around out there, then you will live a very rich life in a bigger world. Someone said to me years ago, if you're going to hoard your good ideas to yourself and never share them, then make sure you have a massive stockpile, because it's probably all you'll have. Instead, if you see ideas as something you don't own, you don't have a monopoly on good ideas, just give them away. They are one of the most powerful seeds you can give away to put your fingerprints on something and influence. So be very generous with your good ideas. Pay someone a compliment. It costs you nothing. I'm going to close with this. There's a little story about generosity. This is Piha. This is on the west coast of Auckland. Beautiful beach from where I'm from. And this beach is notorious for its rips and its undercurrents. And unfortunately, many people die here every year because of these undercurrents and these rips, largely by tourists, which is a shame. It's bad for tourism. So there's a surf lifesaving club at Piha, and if it wasn't for their work, a lot more people would die. And the Piha Surf Lifesaving Club, like many surf lifesaving clubs around the world, is volunteer and is therefore very under-resourced. So some friends of mine who live in Auckland and enjoy surfing at this beach and had probably at times enjoyed the services of the Surf Lifesaving Association, they own a clothing label, and that clothing label is called Hawha. And the guys at Hawha said to the Surf Lifesaving Club, what about we help you out? Let's give your brand a bit of a revamp, and let's design you a range of clothing that we'll do for free, won't cost you anything. We'll do it for free, and all the sales from this range, the profits will go back to the Surf Lifesaving Club. Just a really simple act of generosity, giving away some good ideas to some of their good company, right? So they had no idea that this was going to happen, but this little hat I'm wearing, this red hat that says Piha on it, that's one of those pieces of clothing. And they didn't intend for me to do this, or they had no idea I was going to do this, but their little act of generosity and giving away a good idea went from the west coast of New Zealand all the way to the west coast of the States, and 400 people just heard about it, right? You getting it? It's influence. So I'm going to finish. We don't have Q&A. I think that's tomorrow. But I have a question, and I want to leave you with this question. What comes first? Being resourced enough to afford generosity, or being generous? What comes first? Being resourced enough to afford generosity, or generosity itself? And that is all I have to say. Thank you.